everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 3 of Buddy Daddies. Man, last episode was really nice. And by nice, I mean absolutely chaotic. We've definitely proven that Miri is not exactly the best liability for Kazuki and Rei because they can't really do their hitman job while taking care of a small child. So they had the very responsible idea that we're going to just take her back to her mom. Her mom sent her to this mafia man to try to pawn her off and get some more child support money. That didn't pan out because Kazuki and Rei killed him. So instead now they've realized that Miri is an obstacle. She's a problem with them doing their job. And we've already seen this new guy come on the scene, Rio, that has taken up some of their jobs. They're like, nah, we need to get her back home so we can go back to living our lives. But we all know how this song and dance is going to go, right? We know that something is going to prevent her from going back with her mom. Whether the mom is choosing not to take her back, or whether Kazuki, because he's wanted to be a dad, decides he wants to keep her, or maybe it'll be Rei, because Rei feels to me like the secret softie. He doesn't want to admit it, but I think he really likes Miri, and I think he's going to be the catalyst to get Kazuki and him to keep her. But she's 4 years old, so this is not like, Anya in Spy Family, who's 5 or 6, who has just a twinge more maturity. No, she is a literal 4-year-old, and they play it up very realistically of how she is. So, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to end up doing with that. But I'm very, very excited to see what this episode brings us, right? I don't know. I've enjoyed keeping up with Buddy Day so far. It's been a lot of fun. And now I'm really excited to see where we go to from here. So we'll see, right? I'm plagued by Buddy Daddy stuff on my Twitter timeline. So I feel like I have to watch week to week as it comes out, even though this is going to be coming out later on Patreon and YouTube. I have to keep up weeks to week. Otherwise, I'm spoiled by my Twitter timeline. And I could mute it, but this just is a better excuse. So that's where we're at. So we are going to start Buddy Daddies episode 3. And we are going to do so here in 3, 2, 1. And let's do this. This show is this close from being a BL. It's this close. It's like just toeing the line. It's just toeing the line. It is this close from being a BL, and I'm like, okay, show, be that way. But man, I will admit, the very first episode, I was like, okay, the premise, I like the premise idea, especially once I, got my wits about me and figured out who Miri is. I'm like, okay, the premise is you have 2 hitmen. They accidentally kill a guy and inherit his daughter, who was supposed to go, who the mom sent there to get child support money, and now they have this little 4-year-old girl, they don't know what to do with her. And you have one guy who had a chance of fatherhood, and it was taken away from him, and then you have this other mysterious guy. So it's like the premise of the first episode is like, okay, good. Then the second episode, they realize that, no, this doesn't seem like it's gonna work. She's kind of a hazard. She's in a very dangerous situation, and they're like, we can't really do our jobs properly with her here. So we find the info about the mom about, we'll just take her back where she was found. Everything will be back to normal. We'll go back to what we were doing. And in this episode, no, our 2 guys realize we are going to take care of this kid. We're going to take responsibility for her and somehow make it work. And just the concept now is like fully explored, right? Where apparently this season's going to have 13 episodes. So by next episode, see, if you do like the 3-act structure, and probably next episode I'll break it down if I bring out Whiteboard Coon, but you have a 3-act structure. In your first act, you set up your characters, you set up their conflict, and you set up where the action could possibly go. And usually in a series or a season with 12 to 13 episodes, the first act would be the first 4 episodes, maybe 5. I think in this case it'll be 4. So we've set up with Kazuki. He had the chance to be a dad. We find out in this episode that an explosion literally killed his wife and unborn child. That was taken away from him, and he decided to dedicate his life to being a hitman. Makes sense. Then this episode, we also have established Rei's character, that Rei is like a child at heart. He had his childhood taken away from him, didn't have a father figure in his life, and so now he has the chance to be that father figure for someone else. And so we've set up Rei and Kazuki. their connections to parenthood, Rei's lack thereof of childhood and lack thereof parenthood, and Kazuki's taken away parenthood. And then we have Miri, who's a 4-year-old girl that needs a family, needs a proper family, and these two guys think that they're going to step in and do that for her. So it's like, it's all set up. It's a great setup. I love it so much. And I'm floored by how this episode not only chooses to define parenthood, but that it's very much normalizing the idea that, yeah, these two guys can raise a girl and it's fine. And the thing about it is, I joke that it's so close to being a BL because I really want it to be. I definitely can see kind of the chemistry that could develop between Rei and Kazuki. But honestly, I like the idea of a non-traditional family, whether this becomes a BL or not. It probably won't. And we can joke all we want about how it's so close. Like, it teeters that line real tight. But I like the idea that you have two people who care about Miri and have that parental instinct to want to watch out for her and protect her. And whether or not they're romantically involved doesn't matter. They still care about her and they want to be her parent. And that's normal and fine. I love that. I love that it normalizes the idea that no, they don't have to be a married couple. They don't have to be a guy and a girl. They can be two guys that care about Miri and want to keep her safe, and they both can be Papa Rei, Papa Kazuki, and they both take care of her. Now, the sleeping in the same bed at the end, that part I was like, okay, show, you're giving the audience what it wants. You're skirting that line there. But at the end, if you notice, Rei was asleep, sound asleep, like the best sleep he's had in his life. There with Kazuki and Miri. So freaking cute. So freaking cute. But there's so much good in this episode. This is by far my favorite so far. I absolutely love this episode. But man, Rei's childhood, his father, I feel like his father either ran... I wonder, there's a part of me that's wondering if we're going to get more with his father, and this is an anime only, so it's an original story, so we don't really know, we don't have any reference materials to know where the story is going at this point. I'm curious to know if we will get more with Rei's dad, if we're going to see him again, because I don't know if he's going to be a throwaway character or not, right? I don't know if that's going to be the case, if we're going to see his dad or not. But we get the idea that he either is with the mafia, or he runs a guild of assassins, or he does something, but he runs like an organization, and he makes Rei, his kid, part of his organization, and he's the boss, not his father. It's literally taking like dedicated to his work more than parenting to like a whole new level, right? And I felt so bad because it's like you find out later that the dog attacked him and he couldn't kill the dog. And so the dad killed the dog for him and was like, you're going to get killed if you don't. And maybe it's his father's way of like trying to make his son strong so he'll survive in this world, but it still deprives Rei of a childhood, right? Rei never had the chance to experience or have a childhood, and so now he's getting that second chance with Miri. Both Rei and Kazuki are getting second chances experiencing through Miri. For Rei, it's being, able to be a father figure and also have his childhood. And for Kazuki, it's being able to be a parent, which he doesn't think that he is capable of doing. I love it. I love that Rei, like, starts out on the couch and everything. And then we have, like, that Rei and her both eat the chocolate Oreo cereal. And Kazuki's like, really? Both of you? These two, I swear. Like, Rei and Miri are so similar. They're both, like, children at heart. And it's really cute. But again, I give props to the show because they make Miri the most believable 4-year-old I've ever seen. I've been around 4-year-olds. This is pretty much how they act. It's very, 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 very similar. And she's just like this wild little kid. And Kazuki and Rei, who have no experience parenting, are just trying to figure it out, right? But I like that Rei the whole time, he's like, you're really going to take her back to her mom? Really? I think Rei the entire time was very skeptical and kept saying Kazuki was acting, being like, you're not going to take her back. You say you're going to, but you're not going to take her back. And the irony is that Kazuki was going to take her back, but then the mom didn't want her. And so I like that Rei's like, are you really sending her back? And Kazuki's like, yeah, we don't have any right to watch over her. We can't take care of a kid. It's not going to work. The world we belong to is a world of darkness. And Ray just kind of looks, I love Ray's like blank expression the whole episode. He's like, sure. Like, yeah, okay. So you say, right? And get past this OP. So then Kazuki goes to Q-chan. Q-chan is not happy that they botched the mission. You don't even see his eyes. He looks very unhappy. And I don't think he's unhappy only because the mission was botched, but because Rio had to get involved to clean it up. And it seems like Q has history with Rio. We conveniently aren't going to mention him in this episode. So there's that. I do love Kazuki's like varsity jacket with the D on it. I want Ray to have one with the B for Buddy Daddies. I want them to have matching varsity jackets, but apparently we can't have it. And so Q's been finding information about the woman that was the mom of Miri, and Q says, the doll present that the target left behind, the one you're supposed to return. Do you need any other information on it? I think Q knows they have a kid. I think he's put it together, but it's not his business. And I think that he's waiting for Kazuki or Ray to mention it. And since they aren't, he's just letting it play out. Because Q seems really intelligent, right? And Kazuki seems really suspicious when he like leaves with the envelope, like, oh yeah, that's all I need. Thank you, bye. And yeah, seems suspicious. I think he knows what's up. He's just not telling Kazuki that. But Spice of Life is the name of this episode. The phrase is variety is the spice of life. And so again, a variety of families. This show is combining the found family trope with just the idea of like an atypical non-nuclear family, and I'm kind of all about it. I definitely got oddly enough like Grave of the Fireflies vibes when she made the dumplings. I thought he was gonna like pretend to eat them, but he doesn't. And then she goes off to get the sweet potato. And he says, I can't say no to that smile. He's like, I don't have many memories of smiling when I was her age. So we do get a little bit here. I don't want to spend the entire show making comparisons to Spy Family. I feel like I've done that the last 2 episodes a lot because the last 2 episodes I could see the comparisons. The only comparison I would say that goes to Spy Family in this episode is the comparison of Kazuki and Lloyd from Spy Family. Without spoiling anything, Lloyd is kind of in a similar situation to Kazuki in terms of family. And so that's really all we get, although Kazuki has more backstory seemingly than Lloyd because he has like the thing with his wife and his unborn kid. So I do feel like there's a similarity there, but as far as like Ray and Yor, there's not a similarity there at all. But Kazuki's like, I didn't have any parents growing up. I had a pretty shitty life as a kid. I don't want Miri to go through the same thing. And Ray's like, me either. I like that in this episode, something that's really cool is that Kazuki kind of opens up to Ray. And at first Ray's like, why are you telling me this? Like, we're not friends. We're just, acquaintances that are hitmen that work together. And then after he talks about smiling and Ray opens up to him and says, yeah, my childhood wasn't like that. It wasn't good either. So like they both open up to each other. And he's like, yeah, your family sounds like it's a pain in the ass. So clearly Kazuki knows something about Ray's family. Like if they're a major syndicate or an organization, it would make sense if Ray's family was a big syndicate or like a hired mercenary group or something like that. Because if Ray's the one that owns the condo that they're living in, then it makes sense that his family's footing the bill. That makes sense that he comes from money. And Kazuki's like, I'm just a couch surfer. Don't know what that life's like. And then he's like, I'm not going to ask Ray. He's like, I'm not going to ask about your past. And Ray's like, well, I'm not going to tell you. So I just love that back and forth. And then there is a part of me that like being around children, I'm like, hey guys, maybe go watch over her so she doesn't get abducted. But then again, they can run pretty fast. I guess they'd probably catch up and kick that guy's ass if somebody tried to kidnap her. And then I love that they do rock, paper, scissors to see who's going to go over and like buy the sweet potatoes. And Ray loses and has to go do it. It's really cute. And then he's like, at the end of the day, I just wasn't cut out for it. So there's three parents that we go through in this episode. We go with Miri's mom, we have Kazuki, and then Ray and essentially his dad. I'm going to put them together as one. But it's interesting that Kazuki and Ray and Miri's mom they're both very similar in that they've both gone through trauma and they've both had horrible things happen to them. The difference is, and Ray too, I would say Kazuki, Ray, and Miri's mom have all been involved in some kind of past trauma or abuse, right? And for Kazuki at first, it's like a big Venn diagram, right? Because you have Kazuki and Miri's mom, and both of them think they're not cut out to be parents. Kazuki thinks he wasn't cut out for it. The mom says that she's not meant to have a kid. Nope. But at the end of the day, Kazuki's like, well, whether we think that we're meant to be parents or not, there's a child here that needs parenting, that needs a parent. So whether we want to or not, the kids here, we need to take responsibility and step up and be there for them. And the mom says no. She's like, I don't want to do it. Nope. And Kazuki's like, well, I didn't want to either, but I guess here we are. And then in Ray's situation with Ray and Miri's mom, there's a kind of Venn diagram with them too, because both of them have suffered trauma. Ray with his father and Miri with the men in her life. And Miri's mom seems to wallow in that trauma and let it control her actions and just believe that she can't get herself out of it and there's no point. Ray steps up and becomes a dad and is like, no, I'm going to protect this kid. And so I love that. I love the comparisons between Miri's mom and Ray and Kazuki in different ways, but they both tie to being a parent. And that's so good. And then, yeah, like we got potatoes and Kazuki goes to get drinks. And I love the idea that at first, I like how this episode bookends. We start the episode with her on the swing, wanting Ray to come over and push her. And Ray's like, I know that seems like childish. I don't want to do that. And then by the end, he's like pushing her and he's at the park with her. And it like bookends that way, right? And you have like a social service guy and a police officer who both times asks where her dad is. And the first time she says in public, Miri's like, I'm not supposed to say people are my dad. And he asks if Ray is her family and he says no. And he's like, no, we're not family at all. And she kind of responds to that, right? Miri's like, oh, we're not family? And so when it comes back full circle at the end of the episode where the police are like, oh, is that family? And she kind of looks to Ray like, well, you said you weren't before. And then Ray's like, I'm not a friend. I'm not a relative. I am her Papa Ray. And I'm like, oh, just let me bask in the emotions, right? But yeah, and the thing of it is, Kazuki, he's so outgoing and social, he's able to pull off being her dad and like kind of covers the subject really well. Whereas Ray is kind of introverted and socially awkward, and he does not cover the situation well, which we'll talk about that at the park. But I love it. He's like, when stuff comes up, you have to say that you're her dad. And Ray's like, why? He's like, because otherwise they're going to get up our asses and get us in trouble. And Miri's like, is Ray-kun my papa too? And he says, no. And then she's like, Papa Ray. He's like, wrong. I love that Ray's kind of bow-legged a little bit. And then Kazuki's like, oh, Papa Ray, huh? And so when they go to bed there, I like that she wants to sleep with Kazuki at first. And he's like, no, sleep here on the couch. They got to get her a bed, although maybe not because she's going to sleep with them now, right? But she goes to find... I wondered, because when we saw Ray in the bathtub, I was like, doesn't he have a bed there? It's a really big apartment. He does, but he puts like the Ferris Bueller fake body there, or the little cone of, or it looks like a cylinder there to fool someone into thinking it's a body, and sleeps in the bathtub. And she's like, why are you in here? And he's like, in case if we're ambushed. And earlier, Kazuki tries to tell her a ghost story, and it doesn't work. She's not scared of ghosts. I love that when she finds Ray, here's the thing, Ray is a secret softie. Because if Kazuki had found him in the tub, he would have been like grumbly and whatever. When Miri finds him, he's just like, oh. He doesn't have like a pillow or anything in there. He's just sleeping in the bathtub on that hard linoleum. It's like, no. She's like, how come you sleep here? And he says, in case of an ambush. And she asks what that is. And I like that Ray kind of thinks for a second, like, how do I explain to a 4-year-old what an ambush is? And he goes, oh. He's like, if scary guys come. Like, he's such a kid at heart. Like, he instantly knows what to say and how to phrase it that she gets it. He's like, if scary guys come. And she's like, oh, ghosts? And then she looks like kind of scared. But then she like jumps in with him. She's like, if I have a scary dream and wet the bed, Papa Kazuki will be mad. And then she says the little song that her mom would sing to her. Scary stuff, fly away. And he's like, what is this? She's like, Mama did it for me when I was a little baby. So like she remembers things, right? And the mom, it's so sad because Mary's mom doesn't think that she's done anything right and that she can't be a mom, but like Miri remembers some things that she did. So, and she doesn't think bad of her mom. So that's the sad thing, is that Miri's mother thinks that she's not capable of being a parent. She doesn't deserve to be. She doesn't want to be. And the sad thing is Miri loves her, or loved her, and thought she was a great parent. And that's the thing. Kids they don't get in their heads like adults get in their own heads, right? And she says it's a smile spell. And I love that she makes Ray smile just a little bit. It's really cute. And he's like, I don't smile. And he's like, that's how I was brought up, that we don't smile. And then she says, was it a spell? And what I love is that when she says, was it a spell? He goes, maybe. Like if he didn't really want to play along with her, he could have said no, but he says maybe. So like, yeah, like he's so good with her, right? And then she like plays with his face and everything. And meanwhile, we cut to Kazuki's room. Like she falls asleep and Ray clearly goes to the couch, right? Letting her sleep in there. So we have Kazuki's room. And in his room, he has lots of bourbon bottles. He has like a clearly a Jim Beam mirror there and like a bourbon poster. Not above it. I would, very, very good taste, Kazuki, right? His bed doesn't look that big though. And we have Masaki, who's the singer, right? And we have, Kentucky Straight Bourbon Distillery. Yeah, the Four Roses. Oh, he has there's a bunch here. Yeah. Like, what does he have here? Like Calmore. Like, these are all like whiskey distilleries. Curious. I'm fascinated. It feels like an early 20 guys like college apartment, right? Interesting. So they drive to go and take her back home, and Kazuki is like, just acting like everything's fine. And Ray says, yeah, you're a terrible actor. You really don't want to get rid of her. I love the gyozuri. Gyozuri instead of grocery is absolutely adorable. But Ray gets left with Miri while he goes and checks out where the mom is. And what I like about this scene here is that as he's going through town, like everything looks very realistic. Like the snack Stardust looks like a sketchy bar. Like it looks realistically like where she would work at, right? And he goes in and she's practicing and he recognizes the song Miri sings as being the one that she practices. And true to form, Miri is a bored 4-year-old and she's like, I can't stay in this car doing nothing. Like Ray's just sitting there on his phone occupying himself and she like starts kicking his seat want him to go play. And then we see her. And then this guy shows up asking her like, what does he say when she shows up? Like he thinks that this part is awful because she's like, we don't open till tonight. And he's like, I got a question for you. And she's like, who the hell are you? And that's when we see the guy show up and she looks kind of scared. And this blonde guy, she said, no Johns without my say-so. Like, I don't want you bringing some guy in, right? And he just, like, smacks her. Like, just... like her just being in this abusive relationship. And then Kazuki, like, gets him to leave. And then she gets mad at him saying that that's her man. And Kazuki's like, are you kidding me? Like, you're really with this douche lord. Okay. And then they sit down. And meanwhile, she gets Ray to push her on the swing, right? And gets him to sit on the teeter-totter. It's the cutest thing. Him playing with her in the park. My favorite, though, is when she's on the jungle gym being like, Ray-kun. There's the moms looking at him. And on the outside, the moms are like, oh, what's this handsome guy right here? But he's just standing there. And it's so awkward. And he's just like... like he pretends to wave to like appease her. Oh my God, it's the cutest thing. It's absolutely adorable. And then she tells him, let's play again tomorrow. And he's like, why do you refer to Kazuki as Papa? And she's like, because he's Papa. He saved me. And the thing about it is that Ray treats her quite mature in this moment. Ray's like, what about your real father? And a part of me was like, well, does she even realize that Kazuki's not a real dad? Does she even know that? But then the other part is that, and probably the more important part, is that to her, that doesn't matter. Like to her, a father is someone that protects her and saves her. Because she just looks at him and she's like, a papa is the person who saves you when you're in trouble. And she's like, got it? And he just looks at her like, And that's when he thinks back to his own dad. And we find out that the dad shot the like Doberman in the head. And then he has like Kid Ray. And he looks like he's maybe preteen, like maybe he's like 10 or 11. Where he's got like all the cuts on him. And the dad says, why didn't you finish it off? It's kill or be killed. And poor Ray's like, don't disappoint me. And he calls him dad, but then he turns around and says, don't call me that. Don't call me dad. I'm your boss. And little Kid Ray, he's so cute. Right? And he looks so fiery and passionate when he was a kid. And then you just see like the flame. And like that fire and passion he had as a kid, you see in that one moment, like it just instantly drains from his face. Like it instantly like just dies. And then you cut to him as an adult and he doesn't have that flame anyway. It's just he's been living this do or die life as an assassin. And then he spent too long in the flashback. He got lost and then lost track of where she was, right? And then we cut back to Kazuki. And this conversation, I told y'all a few episodes ago that I knew a guy that he married this woman and she had a son of her own at the time. And then they had a daughter together and then she just left. She just left him, the man, with the son and the daughter and was like, I don't want to be a mom. And just left him with him. And it's the same thing as this. And it was like, it really hit home watching this. I was like, damn, that's like her. And she's like, what did you want? And at first she thinks that he's the one guy, Asahi or whatever. She thinks that or at Sushi, she thinks it's his goons. Like they just brought her here and she's like, I want my money for the kid. And he's like, I don't work for him. I'm glad he didn't say that they killed him. They're like, we just found a lost kid and took her in. And the woman's like, oh, hell, whatever. Me and the kid are nothing to each other now. And I like the Kazuki's like, hey, step up and be a parent. She likes your hamburger steak. And the woman, she's like, oh, that just is some cheap crap that I get from the supermarket. Like, it's nothing special. 200 yen for a 3-pack. But the thing about it is, little kids don't know that and they don't care. Like, money means nothing to a little kid, right? Growing up, I wanted like Hamburger Helper all the time. And that stuff's like the cheap stuff like this. But I wanted it as a kid because I liked it and because I liked my parents cooking it for me. I didn't care how much it cost, right? Miri doesn't care. And Kazuki's like, well, it doesn't matter how much it costs. Make it for her. And she's like, what a cheap date. I don't know where she gets that from. Like this woman's just so self-loathing. And Kazuki's like, so make it for her. She likes it. You're her mother. And she's like, do you think I wanted a kid? And that's when it comes out. She's like that Atsushi took advantage of her and then didn't give her any compensation and kicked her to the curb and apparently destroyed her dreams, the tale as old as time. And she said she doesn't want to see Miri again. And she's like, I wanted to smack her every time she laughed. Which is like the most horrible thing. This mom would like smack this dog, like this sweet kid. And Kazuki's like, well, it's not the kid's fault she's laughing. She's a kid. And you're being just as irresponsible as her father. And then she says, what right do you have to lecture me? And Kazuki says, when a kid laughs, you're supposed to want to protect them even more. Which is what Ray gets to do. And it's like, oh my God, like these two guys defending Miri. It's parental instinct. And she just laughs because she doesn't believe she has it. She's like, what would you know of any of it? It's just, oof. And she talks about like how she hates having to take care of her. What am I supposed to laugh about? And he's like, isn't struggling and sacrificing part of your life for your kid supposed to be the joy of parenthood? And then she just looks at him with such contempt, being like, it's always the ones with the loftiest ideals who bring the greatest misfortune to their families. Being like, oh, you have this big ideal idea of a family, but she basically calls him out for it, right? And then we see like his flashback and we get basically, I could compare it to another anime that has a similar scene of a car blowing up, but y'all probably know what I'm talking about. But the car blows up, and then we see like the woman that was inside of it was his wife. And we see the umbrella. She's like, you never even tried raising a kid yourself. Give me a break. Like, she knows him. Like, she knows that he's trying to raise a kid for herself, right? Like, she'd know that. But yeah, and that's when Kazuki's like, yeah, this is a done deal. It's not going to work. So he gives her the money on the desk and goes. Meanwhile, our highly trained assassin and hitman cannot locate a 4-year-old child that's ran off while he was daydreaming. It's great. But this moment here, because here's the thing. The police had her in custody. They could have taken her, put out a missing thing, and eventually found her mom, as far as Ray knows. As far as Ray knows, the police could have taken her, found her a new home that would have probably been safer than being with these 2 hitmen, and that would be the end of it. But that's not how Ray wants to work. Ray's like, no. He's like, this girl, I want to take care of her. And she's like yelling, she's like, someone save me. She says, save me, Papa. And that gets him. The save me, Papa gets him, where he's like, damn it. This is my chance to be a dad to her. And I love that line where he's like, no, I am her papa. And it's like, it's so good. It's so good. And she goes, and when he holds out his arms to her for her to come to him, I'm like, shut up. I can't. And he's just so nonchalant. I love the cops looking as they walk away like, what did we just witness? Right? And then they catch up with Kazuki. And Kazuki's like, oh, Papa Ray, was it? I love that he's like, oh, have you accepted this nickname? It's so cute. And he's like, you grinned about it too. And he's like, I did not. Mm-hmm. And he's like, so what do we do now? Like, clearly us taking her back to her mom was a failed, botched mission. What do we do now? And I love the exchange where he goes, let's see. Let's go home and have dinner on the way. And I love that Ray says, for 3? For 3. That exchange is just so good. It's so good. And then they go and they get the stuff to make hamburger steak. And she like has a hold of Kazuki's fingers. Right? So cute. And they have the hamburger steak, which she says she likes the cheap stuff better than Kazuki's. And I love that it cuts over to Ray and he thinks the same thing. He's like, yes, it's really good. He's like, I love it. And Kazuki's like, I hate you both. I tried to make you a 5-star, 3-course meal. I see how it is, right? But then that end credit scene, y'all. No, that end credit scene where he's like, it's time for bed. And she says that she wants both Ray and Kazuki to sleep with her. Papa Ray and Papa Kazuki. I like that Ray's first response is, that wouldn't be relaxing, right? And Kazuki's like, oh, well, I could let go, please. And she's like, no. She's like, no, we're all going to sleep together. And they both are like, well, I guess we can. And then they do. They share his small bed, right? His full-size bed. They share between the... I love that Kazuki's get like the punch to the face from her. He's just like, he's the one getting smacked in the sleep. And I love that she grabs the end of Ray's hair, and Ray's already out, but she grabs the end of it. I love that Ray doesn't have a pillow, right? Ray doesn't have a pillow, but he's not used to a pillow because he's used to sleeping in the bathtub. And Kazuki's like on the end of the pillow. What they need is just get a bigger bed. Get a bigger bed and all 3 of you can sleep together. Just do that, right? Right? And Ray's asleep. Oh my gosh, this episode had my heart. It was so cute. Found family, 2 dads, sharing a bed with their kid, both stepping up and being papas. It definitely was an episode that needed to establish that they want to keep Miri and be their dads. Definitely that episode. I'm like, all right, buddy daddies, you got me. You cast the line out. I bit the hook and now you're reeling me in, right? Oh my gosh. But this episode was really good and I really enjoyed it. So I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below, but this episode had my heart and I'm going to go rewatch it now because it was just too good. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I'll be back next week with episode 4 of Buddy Daddies. Bye.